Today on Meet the Farmer TV, part 2 of the Monticello Heritage Harvest Festival, starring Professor Apple, Tom Burford.
I am Professor Apple, and you are watching Meet the Farmer TV.
Meet the Farmer TV is made possible by Planet Earth Diversified, Melli Productions, and Leslie P. Jenkins Photography and Graphic Design. Southern Exposure Seed Exchange, serving the community since 1982 with heirloom varieties and organic seeds. RelayFoods.com, local stores, local farms, local food, serving Charlottesville and Richmond. Better food, more living, less driving. Whole Foods Market, whole foods, whole people, whole planet. Culpeper Media Network, helping to preserve the agricultural history of Virginia. And In the Kitchen magazine, serving the community and everyone who loves good food.
I'm Daniel with Jam According to Daniel, and you're watching Meet the Farmer TV.
Now, we talked to Tom Burford way back when. Let's find out about education, kids, and what is important about the new generation finding out about agriculture.
Here we are at Monticello for the 4th event since the last year on Montalto, and I just finished doing a cider workshop in the Virginia tradition. It would be the same type of cider making that I talked about that Jefferson would have done here at Monticello, and that would have been stored in the cellar, which has recently been redone in the house. If you have an opportunity, go by Monticello and take a look at the new wine cellar and the cider storage. So I went through pressing of the Virginia Hughes crab, which comprised the North Orchard here at Monticello, and Jefferson preferred the cider made from this. He had a cider maker named Jupiter Evans who was born the same year as Jefferson and who became his friend and cider maker. After Jupiter died here at Monticello, his granddaughter wrote him at the White House, where he was serving as president, that the apprentice was making the cider, but there had been explosions in the cellar at night. So apparently the apprentice wasn't paying very close attention to Jupiter. But we were pressing the Virginia Hughes crab, one of the great cider makers actually of the world. And as a single variety, the audience was, when they sampled it, they were very impressed. So it at least showed the audience that cider making is possible in small at home, and you can use the right apple and have some exquisite juice. The cider sort of disappeared from commerce. Good cider disappeared from commerce because after the Second World War, and when there was a surplus of the Red Delicious apple, most of the cider that was sold on roadside stands were made of Red Delicious apples, which is undoubtedly the worst variety you could use for making cider. So about that same time there was motoring, when in the late 40s and early 50s, and you would hear in this area, the parents would take the kiddies up on the Blue Ridge Parkway, and in the fall there were the fruit stands, and they would say, let's stop and get apples and some cider to drink. So they passed cups of this Red Delicious cider back to the kids, and they would take a sip and would think, and often would be very vocal about it, this is undoubtedly the worst cider I have ever put in my mouth. I hate cider. I will never drink it again. So we lost a whole generation of cider makers or consumers who demanded a good product. This is all changed now, and this is one of the hot new things that's happening. Cider making, both fresh ciders with the right apple varieties, as well as hard cider be made by cideries that are springing up all over the country. Here in Virginia, there are 2 major cideries, Vintage Virginia Apples, which is 8 miles south of the city of Charlottesville, and Foggy Ridge Cider, which is over near Floyd, Virginia, in southwest Virginia. They have undoubtedly are doing something right because the supply will not fill the demand. So every year they are trying to make more and more. More people are discovering cider, and I am doing my best to educate the public that cider making is something that you can do at home, or if not, will become available to buy. Vintage Virginia Apples is the parent of the Albemarle Cider Works, and it is expanding very fast, and they are beginning to put their ciders into the markets, not only in Central Virginia but outside of Central Virginia. And there apparently is a great demand for them because they have recently put 2 more 1,500-gallon fermentation tanks into their cidery, and so that speaks for itself that the spin-off and the great thing for the orchards is that many of the varieties that are used can come from the orchards who have been trying to export or sell them otherwise. So we can make a whole new cottage industry with cider making and small cider. Cider once again become a drink of choice, and it's sort of imagined that with all of the soft drinks in 1 year or 1 day that are consumed, if all of that was cider, we would not only be healthier, but economically it would spawn many more orchards being planted with cider, good making cider varieties. Not only should you find apples locally for fresh eating, but these buy cider locally. For goodness sakes, don't go into the supermarket and buy the cider that they have, because they are made of concentrate that come out not from this country, I will say. We know who the great suppliers are offshore, but it's bilious. And if we continue to buy and use that and try to feed it to the future generations of cider drinkers, we are going to repeat exactly what happened before. They will find it bilious, they will find it disgusting, and they say, I hate cider and I'm not going to drink cider. So we need to provide good, locally made juice, whether it be fresh or whether it be fermented into hard cider. So this was not only stimulate the local economy, but if we continue to do this, it becomes a model that has a spin-off. Rather than have big conglomerates that are providing us apple products, we will have in Virginia alone hundreds of small craft-made ciders from varieties that were particularly good for cider, that people will really enjoy drinking. Jefferson was a great experimenter. He sort of made the model for many, not only vegetables but for fruits, and planted in his orchard the great classic American varieties that mostly came out of the plantings of seeds from these huge cider orchards. The water originally was very brackish. It poisoned many people. So when the Northern Europeans and the British colonists came into this area, they brought with them the tradition of cider making. So the apple for that purpose was very much sought. And Jefferson had cider on the table every day, as I did as a boy. The cider pitchers were always full, and often if we had visitors, they would go home with a jug of cider if they did not make cider. So it was considered, a great favor to give a neighbor who had not cider a jug of cider, and they occasionally would bring it back for refill, which was wonderful. And it was not thought, well, that person's greedy. No, that person likes cider, likes my cider, and I'm honored. So Jefferson was, with his hospitality, was much the same way. I'm sure that many of his, particularly European visitors, they discovered American cider. And it's distinctive in that it was made from American varieties. The Roxbury Russet, the Virginia Hughes Crab. These were exquisite cider makers that made a vintage cider. That means alone it made a good cider. Most ciders are a blend. To make a good cider, as to make a good pie, you need 4 elements. You need sugar, acid, tannin, and an aromatic. And if you don't have, say, enough tannin in, you blend a variety in that would make it very much desirable. They're, even as crude as the operations were, there was a sophistication. The scientific elements of cider making were pretty well known, but to make really good cider, there is an art, the art of cider making. And it's often a visceral feeling that this would be much more enhanced if I used a little more tannin. So you add some tannin. So you're blending until you get something that this is good. This is what I would like to sit and drink a full glass of. We all know tea, and if you leave tea, make it very, very, very strong, you have that tannin taste. That is the element that we're talking with tannin. The acid, there is the general process in making hard cider is to convert the sugar that is in that apple to a alcohol, and it will run its natural course of fermentation. The regulations now and the law in the Commonwealth of Virginia is that your cider has to be 7% or less alcohol. If it goes over 7%, you have apple wine. So that is the demarcation percentage. Before these regulations, you would really want to get as much alcohol as possible. There are certain varieties of apples that are very high in sugar. One is the Grimes Golden, and I have in the past made a cider that was 11% alcohol that went close to the wines. So the amount of sugar in it, you allow the apple to reach its height of flavor, and then press it, and then you get the full impact of a good apple tasting cider. For many, many years, I've lived 3/4 of a century, and for many, many years, I had an operation of an orchard and a nursery, and all of the spin-offs on fruit, including apples with cider making. And I suddenly realized after about 10 years ago that this was not known to but few people. And so I shut down my operation to devote the rest of my life to teaching, to education, to sharing my experiences with other people. I like to make the approach from low technology so that we are not damaging the environment, so that we can make it available to all people. It makes it democratic. And here in Monticello, I'm sure that Mr. Jefferson would be up in the house applauding that statement, because he wanted all people to share good, not only liberty, but good food. So that's much what his effort was in his vegetable garden and orchard here, was to demonstrate how to grow. So that is what I am doing at the present time. And as I stand here under one of the 2 native crab apples that existed in America when Jefferson arrived, this is Malus coronaria. The other one nearby is Malus augustifolia. And I think that did Jefferson deliberately plant these two here? Because it's so significant that these were the only apples in America, and the rest came and were enhanced and marketed and shared with by people like Thomas Jefferson. I would like to sort of conclude in saying that we will find more often events like this where you can go and see what people are really doing. Everyone here, believe you me, did not go to a distributor and buy anything that they are selling. They come from the earth here, and this is what makes it so special. And each year, this is the 4th year, and each year more and more people are attending, and we have gone from 2 events at Tufton Farm to last year at Monticello, and today the ultimate event right within sight on the grounds here at Monticello.
Now let's find out about these special longboats built to go on just a few inches of water called bateaux. From Jefferson's time, let's find out what's up with that.
I'm here with the Virginia Canals and Navigation Society. This is an 18th century James River tobacco boat. Specifically, it's the old Fluvanna, and has run in the James River Bateau Festival for 15 years, and it's seen its better day. It was taken down the James during the Bateau Festival this year by a group of boys from Waynesboro, and a lot of people thought they would never get it down there, but they did an excellent job. It was hard work, but they got it down there. The boats were typically 45, some maybe as much as 70 feet long, built of white oak, 7.5 feet wide. They could haul 12,000 pounds of agricultural or trade goods downriver in about 8 inches of water. So the rivers back then were really the super highway of Virginia. The first canal built in the United States was around the rocks in Richmond, went from West Ham to downtown to the turning basin. You can look at boat construction here. This is a rib base. The ribs in this boat were not cut out, but this is a rib base, and you can see that this was cut out. Back in the day, the hogsheads of tobacco were rolled right into the boat. They served as chocks and didn't move around. It took a man and a team of oxen or a team of draft horses 5 to 9 days to get a barrel of tobacco to Richmond. Once these boats were on the water, it took them 3 to 5 men 3 days to get 12 barrels to Richmond. So it was a big step in the transportation of Virginia. Here we have a rib arm. A rib arm connects to each side of the rib base, and then a gusset attaches on the other side. And we built one of these boats this winter. We started on March the 13th, once we could get some wood after all the snow was gone, and we worked on it feverishly for the next 3 months. We had it finished just in time for the Bateau Festival. Down the river we went. If you want to look on the Nelson County Life website, we were in a video on that, and we were featured in an article with those folks. Thomas Jefferson probably shipped a lot of his agricultural goods down the Rivanna River. There was an actual Rivanna navigation, a series of locks and dams built. Prior to the locks and dams and canal, there was a river navigation where they would go in and dynamite holes through ledges in rocks, build wing dams, and create what they called a sluice. The water was too shallow to get the boat down, so the wing dam channeled the water into this hole, and these boats went on downriver. The Rivanna River is loaded with old sluices, locks, dams. It's incredible to take a float trip down the Rivanna and see this. The Rivanna Mills down near Columbia was a thriving town with I believe it was a 20-foot high dam across the river there. All the remains are still there. It's quite impressive.
Now let's hear from another one of the presenters.
I'm Lenny Ashmore Sorenson, and I'm the African American research historian at Monticello. But I also have, I teach cookery and small rural skills, and keep hens and eggs and butcher fryers once a year. I'm working with Guinevere Higgins, and she's going to be, who's the kind of the head person of Cluck, talking about backyard chickens and the ways to raise them and why to raise them. And I'm going to be talking about butchering chickens, what that means and how we want to think about it, and indeed a little bit about how to do it. Well, you know, Jefferson himself didn't do a lot of things, but he had people around him who did, and they did them competently and skillfully, and certainly within the enslaved community, they raised scores and scores of chickens and eggs, and many times they sold them into the Jefferson kitchen economy. So that's how we have evidence of that. But it certainly means that they as a community knew how to keep those hens on a nest for 21 days till those chicks came, how to raise them to edible birds, how to routinely collect dozens and dozens of eggs. So they were part of that agricultural milieu of their time. They were competent and skilled agriculturalists, and they supported Jefferson's economy and indeed his table. Some part of the 20th century, of course, is that the vast majority of people today are urban or small town, and so they have in many ways been separated from there by 2 and even 3 generations from the farm. And so the movement of interest, that interconnection between urban and rural and the dependence between urban and rural has been burgeoning, I think, over the last 10 years. We have locally the Quality Community Council Garden, which is splendid. What a beautiful way to reach to the community, and they've had such a wonderful response. So I think with a lot of people, of working class people, be they black or white, it's helping people have time to do these things, have organizations in which they can plug in, re-emphasize the importance of good food, fresh, which also has to do with what are these kids eating in school, where are those foods coming from. There are all of those issues, and it's not just the African American community, but all of working class Americans that many times I think feel a little distanced from the foodie movement. And it's part of the role of anybody that's interested is to make sure that everybody's brought into the tent. It's a big tent. We can always make the tent bigger. It's not a zero-sum game. I don't know the demographics of all of it. I just know that I'm one very small part of it, and it's to urge people to levels of what I call self-reliance rather than self-sufficiency. None of us are self-sufficient. We need everybody. Everybody needs somebody. In fact, we usually need many somebodies. But we can learn to be more self-reliant, and that's what I see within, say, the last 10 years within Albemarle and the surrounding counties, of people understanding how to make connections between small farmers, larger farmers, milk producers, others, and begin to make political changes such that the big oligarchs, and I'm sorry I have to use that word, who produce at vast levels, do not get to set the rules for the small producer. If I raise a cow and I know that that cow is brucellosis free, and then how I deal with that milk needs to be, there needs to be some more reasoned thing about it. I came here from South Dakota, where you can sell anything off your farm as long as people come to you to get it. And while it may not be, we may have more strictures, we don't need that you can't sell anything. That's ridiculous, especially with responsible, grown-up people who are willing to learn how to do it right. And so it's very important to have both a political aspect, a local aspect, a community aspect, an intellectual exchange about these things. There's issues about family farms versus, say, the large industrial farm. But we have to actually ask, what size is a family farm? I believe that there are family farms that have 1 cow, a 1-acre garden, 35 hens, grow a few fryers, have a pig or 2. That's a family farm. They may not make their major living doing it, but they make some part of their living selling or being part of the food community. Then you have family farms that are growing pasture or growing some cattle. They're all family farms. So we need to be more inclusive in order to come together so that the very large industrial farms, I believe that we need to help the large industrial farms. the people that are running 800,000 chickens a day, what? That is, they need to be helped to divide up. Let's have more chicken farmers. We need it. We got 370 million people in the country. We don't need less food. We need, but let's have 15 more farmers doing that, and so only a guy raises 50,000 chickens. Let's do more instead of chasing people off the land, off the farm. And let's reintroduce these so that people can actually begin becoming small farmers as part of their household economy. Somebody works off the farm, somebody works on the farm. We have to continue the discussion and not let the big guys run the discussion at the General Assembly level, which is what they do. Okay, so that stainless steel this and great big vats that and inspections of blah, blah, blah. That all profits who? That's where you ask the question. Who profits by that? Well, only the big guys. Some little guy that wants to produce, 60 pounds of ice cream a week, or 50 pounds of goat cheese, I don't know if we can say this on television, they're screwed. You see, because they can't meet those requirements. I will teach butchering chickens, but I would take my life, my life in my hands practically to sell a chicken that's dead, that I raised, that I will eat it. I can't sell that to somebody who was right there helping me do that. That's, it just doesn't make any sense. And we need to get past that. I would like to see, when I think of what's coming in the future, I've lived long enough to be through several waves of the back to the land, organic movement, all those things. I think they're always wonderful, and they always bring on a new group of ideas. Is that I would like to see more of a communication between rural and urban, to continue that dialogue. I would like to see small, really small, merge with slightly bigger small, to have, again, a useful dialogue. And for me personally, I want to continue, I'm really old here, and I'm ready to teach what I know to people and broaden, because I think that's anyone that has certain kinds of experience, it's very important to pass those experiences on within our generation or to the newer, younger generation, whoever, people who didn't have a grandmother that canned and didn't live on a farm, and so but are really curious and want to know these things. Well, it's incumbent upon us to pass some of that on. And may I mention my blog site? Okay, www.indigohousehistory.com. I'm Lenny Sorenson, African American research historian at Monticello, and you're watching Meet the Farmer TV.
Thank you for joining us again at Monticello for the Heritage Harvest Festival. Join us next week for Part 3, and Ira Wallace, the founder of this event, and Southern Exposure Seed Exchange extraordinaire.
Everything is beautiful.
Meet the Farmer TV is made possible by Planet Earth Diversified, Melli Productions, and Leslie P. Jenkins Photography and Graphic Design. Southern Exposure Seed Exchange, serving the community since 1982 with heirloom varieties and organic seeds. RelayFoods.com, local stores, local farms, local food, serving Charlottesville and Richmond. Better food, more living, less driving. Whole Foods Market, whole foods, whole people, whole planet. Culpeper Media Network, helping to preserve the agricultural history of Virginia. And In the Kitchen magazine, serving the community and everyone who loves good food.